At last, the fifth day, and God begins to create a whole new class of earthly creatures, creatures with intelligence that can move on their own and that have a higher life essence than plants. God speaks and the waters are virtually crammed with life. Here we present a modest sampling of the astonishing variety of aquatic life that God created on the fifth day.
Then God said, "Let the waters abound with an abundance of living creatures." So God created great sea creatures and every living thing that moves, with which the waters abounded. And God saw that it was good.
A common design feature of many animals is a backbone, or vertebra. Within each creation day, we will divide the animals as either vertebrates with backbone or invertebrates without backbones. A fish is defined as an animal with a backbone, gills for breathing, scales, and fins. They are called the osteichthyes. Osteo means bone, and ichthyes is Greek for fish, like the ichthus symbol for Christianity. Bass, cod, goldfish, swordfish, tuna, salmon, minnows, piranha, these are all the osteichthyes, along with about 9,000 others, the bony fish. The three main parts of a typical fish are the head, the trunk, and the tail. The most interesting part of the head are the gills, located on both sides of their head. Water has only 1/30th the amount of oxygen that our air does, so many fish open and close their mouths constantly, pumping water over their gills. Other fish need to swim with their mouths open continually to get enough oxygen. If they stop, they will die by suffocation. A fish uses its nose to smell for food, to sniff out enemies, to smell their way home, and to locate a suitable mate. The trunk section has several fins which mostly serve to keep the fish from tipping over. Their skin secretes a slimy mucus that keeps them slippery and gives them their distinctly fishy smell. Scales are actually transparent bone embedded in the skin. Scales have ring segments providing a record of their age, similar to tree rings. The tail consists, for the most part, of the fin. With it, goldfish swim about 3 miles an hour, trout about 21 miles per hour, and sailfish top out at nearly 70 miles per hour. Inside the bony fish, there's a small brain about the size of a raisin. Here's the heart, stomach, and the all-important air bladder to keep the fish from sinking. Finally, an internal skeleton that reveals why they're called bony fish. Bony fish can group in enormous schools, sometimes 1 million or more at a time. Seahorses are classed as bony fish, though they look virtually nothing like a fish. They even swim vertically by rapid hummingbird-like beats of their tiny fins. The male carries the seahorse eggs in a pouch, like a kangaroo, until he goes into labor and gives birth to little seahorses. Seahorses mate for life. Some seahorses, like these sea dragons, look like floating seaweed, and other seahorses are poisonous. Many fish are strange and frightening, like the nasty-looking deep-sea viper and the anglerfish. They have needle-sharp teeth and movable teeth in their throat, apparently to grab their prey and pull it in. Fortunately, they live in very deep water. The electric eel and African electric catfish stun their prey with a charge of 600 volts at 2 amps, enough to badly shock or electrocute a grown man. California flying fish are actually gliding fish. Gaining speeds up to 40 miles an hour, they leap from the water and spread their pelvic fins. Incredibly, they can glide nearly 500 feet. Sharks are fish without bones. They are the chondrichthyes, the cartilage fish. Sharks have no air bladder. They must continually swim or sink, so most sharks never get to sleep. They're just always swimming, looking for something to eat. Sharks are fearsome. They have rows of razor-sharp teeth, using and losing as many as 2,000 teeth every year. They are awesome hunters and can smell a small amount of blood more than a quarter mile away. People use shark skin for sandpaper. Sharks are tough. Rays are cartilage fish too. The giant manta ray is harmless but huge, 25 feet across and weighs a ton and a half. But smaller rays are responsible for more injuries to people than all the other species of fish combined. The formidable stingray has a sharp, poisonous stinger on the end of its whipped tail, which can deliver a painful or lethal wound. Bony fish, cartilage fish, and the other main class of fish are jawless fish. These include lampreys and hagfish. Jawless fish are in the class Agnatha, meaning no jaws. They attach themselves to other fish and feed off of them as the fish swims along. Hagfish are similarly awful, plus they produce huge quantities of thick, sticky slime, a real ugly fish, which is why they were named hagfish. They are a plague for the fishing industry, causing millions of dollars in fish damage every year. Fortunately, neither of these fish attack people. Agnatha mostly live in the Atlantic Ocean and the Great Lakes. When you say the word mammal, many people think of land animals, horses, dogs, lions, but there are several aquatic mammals and even a flying mammal. The mammal category was invented by Carolus Linnaeus to group together many otherwise completely unrelated animals. A lot of very different animals were designed to give birth to live young, and then to nurse those young. They were also given a spine and lungs, etc. Linnaeus grouped them all together and gave them the name mammals, after the mammary glands used for nursing. Many people look at the mammal category with some confusion, and understandably so, because most of these animals look about as similar as an orange and a hammer. You got a grazing horse, a flying bat, and a swimming dolphin. What could be more different? But the mammal category has its value, especially for biologists who are studying a particular system. After all, you can learn a lot about lungs and four-chambered hearts just by grouping together unrelated animals who share those particular features. With that being said, let's turn our attention to the aquatic mammals. The world's largest animal ever created is the giant blue whale, and they still swim in the oceans today. A blue whale can grow over 100 feet and weigh 160 tons. The biggest known dinosaurs are estimated at a mere 50 to 75 tons, and the Kronosaurus was only half that of the blue whale. A giant brachiosaurus, a giraffe, and an elephant could all stand on the back of a blue whale with plenty of room to spare. Its heart alone is the size of a car. Whales are classified by how they feed. The blue whale, gray whale, and humpback whale are all filter feeders. They have two huge filters in place of teeth called baleen. As they swim, they filter millions of gallons of water through their baleen, eating tiny creatures, plankton, that catch in the screen, several thousand pounds every day. Thus, the biggest animals eat the smallest animals. Other whales chase their prey and use their teeth to grip their food, often swallowing it whole, like killer whales, sperm whales, bottlenose and narwhal whales. Dolphins and porpoises are also meat eaters. They have the amazing ability to emit sonar-type pulses and clicking noises to locate prey, similar to how bats find food. Like many whales, they can communicate with each other using high-pitched whistles and squeals that carry through miles of ocean. Other animals in the aquatic mammal category include toothed whales like killer whales. Seals and walruses are also included in the mammal group. By the way, the word walrus means horse whale. There are nearly 6,000 species of reptiles in the world, and only a few of them are aquatic, and most of those are sea snakes. They like to live in warm tropical waters, and nearly every last one of them are venomous. Sea snakes are real air-breathing snakes with forked tongues and body scales. They can spend up to 2 hours on a breath and then they need to surface. Sea snakes shed their skin every 2 to 6 weeks by rubbing their lip against something hard and catching it. The snake then crawls forward and leaves the skin and any attached barnacles behind. Sea turtles are the other primary marine reptile. They're quick swimmers even though they can weigh as much as a small car. Sea turtles can live to be well over 100 years old, probably the oldest living animals on record. Other reptiles that spend a lot of time in the water, like crocodiles, will be covered in the land animals segment, along with the amphibian creatures. Invertebrates, as we've said, have no backbone. But just because you have no backbone doesn't mean you're a spineless coward. In fact, some of the invertebrates are among the most deadly and aggressive creatures in the world. Mollusks include squids, octopi, clams, snails, and slugs. Cuvier, a creationist and good friend of Linnaeus, named them after the Latin word for a soft nut, mollusca, because the nut was soft inside, just like these animals. Most have shells, but some do not. The 3 main classes of mollusks are the bellyfoots, the headfoots, and the double doors. Snails, slugs, and abalone are gastropods, or bellyfoots, because their belly sits inside their shell and on top of their slimy foot. Their shells are usually coiled in an upward spiral that almost always goes clockwise. Inside the shell are all the snail's internal organs: heart, liver, stomach, intestines, and lungs. Here's the snail's mouth, eyes, and a nerve bundle that serves for the brain. Aquatic snails and land snails can be pests and carry diseases, but some snails are tasty and safe to eat. People call it escargot. Abalone is another gastropod and a seafood restaurant favorite. Cephalopods, literally the headfoots, include squids and octopuses. The head and the foot are combined, thus the name. Squids have long tubular bodies, a little head, and a long inner bone called a pen. They are fast swimmers, moving by a kind of jet propulsion, forcing water quickly out of a siphon tube. Common squids are about 1 foot long. They have 8 arms and 2 tentacles, which they use to seize bony fish, then eat with their sharp beak-like jaws. They can squirt an inky black fluid as a smokescreen, change colors at will, and generate their own bioluminescent light. The giant squid can grow up to 40 feet, though some estimates are as high as 60 feet long. They are the favorite food of sperm whales. We actually find them inside sperm whales, and we also see dead ones washed up on the shore. In 2004, a living giant squid was finally photographed for the first time ever. An octopus is one of the most fantastic invertebrates, growing anywhere from 1 foot to 30 feet across. It has a body shaped like a bag, which can also change colors, and 8 radiating tentacles with a double row of suckers on each arm. The tentacles have sensors that let the octopus know what something might taste like. Octopuses can regrow a missing tentacle in 6 weeks. Most aquariums recognize the unusual intelligence of the octopus, being able to recognize unusual shapes in exchange for food, or unscrewing jars to get to a crab inside. Most octopuses are solitary creatures, but their bite can be toxic, and they have been known to attack divers. The nautilus is like a squid with a shell. The animal itself has nearly 100 tentacles and loves shrimp, but it's the chambered shell that makes it famous. As the animal grows, it forms a larger chamber and abandons the smaller rooms. The spirals are mathematically symmetrical. The hollow chambers can be filled with air or water, allowing the nautilus to rise and sink like the ballast in a submarine. Valve is an Old English word meaning door. Bivalves are literally the double doors because, see? 2 shell doors with a hinge in the middle. Bivalves, like clams and oysters, are often called shellfish. They eat by siphoning water and food particles in and out of their shells. If a piece of sand gets stuck in an oyster, it secretes layers of pearl around it to isolate the irritant. After about 7 years, a valuable pearl is formed. A single high-quality pearl is worth anywhere from $40 to over $1,000. The shell of mollusks are calcium carbonate, which the mollusk makes as it grows. Many of these shells have been used as money throughout history. Arthropod means jointed foot. There are aquatic arthropods, land arthropods, and flying arthropods. The major aquatic arthropods include lobsters, crabs, and shrimp. They are often called crustaceans, meaning with a crust. Crustaceans all have a crusty outside called an exoskeleton and 3 distinct body segments: head, thorax, and abdomen. Crabs do also, but they are covered by their single shell. Lobsters, crayfish, and crabs are typical crustaceans. Crustaceans continue to grow, but their shells are made of chitin, and chitin doesn't stretch like our skin does. Once the crust gets too crowded to live in, they shed or molt, leaving only the exoskeleton behind. At this point, the crustacean is very soft and extremely vulnerable to predators. It takes a few days for the exoskeleton to harden up again. Barnacles, thousands of them. Barnacles permanently glue themselves to rocks, piers, driftwood, ship bottoms, and whales, and remain there all their adult lives. Marine ships sail through fresh water from time to time, as barnacles don't like fresh water and will fall off from the hull. At low tide, they retreat into their shells, but when covered by the seawater, fine hair-like rakes come out and comb through the water for edibles. Barnacle glue is thought to be the strongest in the world and is often studied to try to uncover its secrets. Protozoa. Tiny water animals, so small you need a microscope to see any detail, or to see some at all for that matter. The word protozoa is a somewhat unfortunate label, meaning the first animals. These small aquatic animals were made on the fifth day of creation, right along with all other water animals. The 30,000 different protozoa are amazing, self-contained, incredibly complex little one-celled mini beasts. Here are three primary types of protozoa. Euglena are aquatic animals with chlorophyll, animals with plants in them, which is why it's difficult to decide what kingdom to put them in. These kind of animals move around with these little whipping tails called flagellum. Flagellum means whip. They also have an eye, sort of, right here. It's called an eye spot, and it helps direct the euglena toward light to photosynthesize food when it's not eating other microscopic animals. The name euglena actually means good eye. Many people have heard about amoebas. Amoebas are known for their pseudopods, their fake feet, which they use to slowly move about. These fake feet will slowly extend out from the amoeba and completely surround a particle of food. A little vacuole forms around the food, where enzymes break down the food and the amoeba absorbs it. The undigested particles are then released and the vacuole disappears. Paramecium are protozoa with hairy edges. Paramecium are classed as Celiophora, which means eyelash carrier, because they use hundreds of little cilia hairs to swim around at 6 inches a minute, which, for their size, is the equivalent of a man running about 70 miles per hour. Protozoa have a central nucleus, which serves as a sort of brain, controlling the animal's basic functions. Here is the mouth, called the oral groove, cilia for movement, food vacuoles, like the amoeba, 2 star-shaped vacuoles to sponge up excess water, and what paramecium would be complete without weapons? Dart-like weapons surround the outside and shoot out to defend or attack. Protozoa reproduce by dividing themselves in half, a process that takes about 20 minutes. Some protozoa are parasitic and dangerous, and many are found in water contaminated by animal droppings and human waste. This is one of the reasons that diseases decrease when people get access to clean drinking water and properly dispose of waste products. When we hear the word worm, we generally think of the common, useful, everyday earthworm. Unfortunately, most worms are aquatic and none of them are particularly attractive. Warning, this is probably not the section you want to be watching while eating lunch. Somehow, worms just aren't an appetizing companion, and parasitic worms are even worse. And most aquatic worms are parasites. Tapeworms are a flat worm with a segmented body. They hook onto the intestinal tract and absorb whatever passes through, like a sponge. Tapeworms can easily grow over 30 feet long. Tapeworm larvae live dormant inside the muscle tissue of infected pigs, cattle, and fish. If you eat undercooked meat which was infected, well, the little darlings wake up from dormancy and migrate into your intestines, where they can live for up to 25 years, causing a whole host of unpleasant symptoms. Liver flukes are another flatworm, which spend at least part of their infamous lives inside, of all things, snails. The larvae migrate to larger animals, like sheep, where they can infect the vital organs. Millions of people in developing countries suffer internal damage because of these worms. The lesson? Don't eat undercooked meat, especially pork. Roundworms are called nematodes, meaning thread worm. No segments, just like a thread. Pinworms in young children are by far the worst parasitic worm problem in the United States. But fortunately, they aren't life-threatening and are fairly easily cured with medicine. Unsanitary conditions are the prevalent cause. Hookworms are also nematodes and are prevalent in Asia, South America, Africa, or any area where the soil might be contaminated by human waste. They attach to bare feet and burrow inside the host. From there they act like worms. The lesson, especially when traveling overseas, be aware of any soil that might be contaminated and wear your shoes. Just one more, and then I promise we'll stop with the worms. Leeches. Most leeches are aquatic, and they eat blood, attaching to animals, fish, and people. They really like the swampy tropics and bogs, but exist just about everywhere in the world. Leeches attach to the outer skin of their host, secreting a painkiller so you don't feel the bite, and an anti-clotting agent to keep the food coming. After they feed, they drop off and swim away. One good feeding will last the leech a full year. Fortunately, leeches are more of a nuisance than a threat. Early physicians used the medicinal leech to remove blood from patients, and from time to time, modern medicine experiments with this leech to test the anti-clotting agents for possible use in surgeries. Okay, that's the end of the worm segment. You can eat your lunch now. Maybe. Many years ago, when my brother and I were little boys, we were vacationing with our parents at the ocean. He saw something slimy in the water and dared me to grab what he thought were blue fish guts. He even called them that, blue fish guts. I wasn't afraid. I took the dare. Jellyfish are 98% water and belong to the phylum called Cnidarians, meaning stinging creature. And with over 200 different kinds in the ocean, it's no wonder that some of them can even be mistaken for blue fish guts. Your typical jellyfish has a mouth in the center of the umbrella, arms to move the food into its mouth, a stomach, a complex network of nerves spread throughout their body that works as a brain. Many jellyfish have stinging tentacles armed with spring-loaded venomous harpoons called nematocytes. When stimulated, the springs release, shooting out the mini harpoons with extremely painful results.